I grew up overshadowed by the golden child. She tried to seduce my husband, we exposed her, and my mother framed me, refusing her faults. Hello, everyone, I need some help and maybe a place to rant. This will be a long one, so please bear with me. I, 33F, have always had a problematic connection with my younger sister, Julia, 30F. Julia is our family's golden child, which has caused me grief since we were little. Growing up, our parents always preferred Julia. She was the beautiful, talented, and all-around perfect person. Meanwhile, I was the older sister who consistently fell short of their expectations. My earliest memories include occasions when I felt invisible next to her. One memory strikes out so vividly. I was about 8 years old and it was my birthday. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, fantasizing about the cake, the gifts, and the attention. But as soon as Julia entered the room, everyone's attention went to her. She was just 5 at the time, but she had a talent for stealing the show. She began singing a song she had learned in kindergarten, and everyone applauded, completely forgetting that it was my special day. My parents didn't notice the tears welling up in my eyes as I watched them adore her. This was a pattern that continued throughout our childhood. Julia received the greatest clothes, the most attention, and all of the compliments. I recall feeling pleased of myself after receiving a B on a math test. However, when I presented it to my parents, they only glanced at it before asking Julia about her day. She had colored a picture at school, and that was considered more impressive. The hardest aspect was that Julia was well aware of her position within the family. She wasn't a malevolent child, but she knew how to use circumstances to her advantage. If we ever fought, as siblings do, she would scream and run to our parents, who would always support her side. I was always the one that got scolded, regardless of the situation. The dynamics remained rather stable as we grew older. Julia excelled in whatever she did. She was a straight A student, a star athlete, and eventually a social butterfly with a large network of friends. In contrast, I suffered both intellectually and socially. I was shy, introverted, and had difficulty establishing friends. Our parents frequently compared us, always adversely to me. "Why can't you be more like Julia?" was a constant refrain in our home. High school was really stressful. Julia was a freshman when I was a senior, and she rapidly gained popularity. She joined the cheerleading squad, was chosen class president, and boys wanted to date her. I was the nerdy senior who rarely had any friends and spent the most of his time in the library. She seemed to be the center of my existence. One incident from high school still bothers me. There was a major dance coming up, and I had finally worked up the guts to ask a boy I liked to go with me. To my astonishment and happiness, he replied yes. But a week before the dance, he canceled, claiming he had invited someone else. Someone else turned out to be Julia. She had no idea I had asked him, but it didn't matter. She got to go to the dance with him, whilst I stayed at home, devastated and alone. After high school, I attended a local community college, while Julia received a scholarship to a prominent university. Our parents were understandably pleased of her, but it hurt to see how little they cared about my accomplishments. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my tuition, but Julia's expenses were covered by our parents. They paid her many visits, attended her college functions, and were continuously positive about her progress. Meanwhile, I had to fend for myself, both emotionally and financially. I eventually earned a nursing degree, while Julia went to law school. By then, I had learnt not to seek my parents' approval. I moved out, obtained a job, and attempted to establish a life for myself. But the agony of those early years never left me. Julia and I remained in touch, but our connection was strained. She was always the successful, attractive sister, but I was just myself. Fast forward a few years, I met a beautiful man named Alex and we married. For the first time in my life, I felt truly appreciated and cherished. Alex was aware of my family dynamics and was really helpful. He helped me realize my own worth beyond the shadows cast by my parents and sister. We purchased a home, and I began to feel like I could finally leave the past behind. But Julia returned to my life in an unexpected way. She had completed law school and was working for a respected firm. She became engaged to a man who seemed perfect in every aspect. Our parents were ecstatic and couldn't stop talking about the forthcoming wedding. I tried to be pleased for her, but old feelings of inadequacy and hatred came back. Julia asked me to be her maid of honor. I was taken aback. We weren't friends, and I questioned why she would want me in such an important capacity, but she insisted on rebuilding our connection. I reluctantly consented, believing that this would be an opportunity to repair old hurts. The wedding preparations were a nightmare. Julia was a bridezilla, demanding and domineering. Every choice had to go via her, and she frequently rejected my thoughts and proposals. It was evident that she had not changed much. She still desired to be the center of attention. But I gritted my teeth and went along with it, hoping to support her and even gain some of her favor. Next came the bridal shower. It was a spectacular event hosted by our parents and attended by Julia's numerous friends and colleagues. I felt out of place and uncomfortable, but I kept a brave face. During the event, our mother delivered a speech praising Julia to the skies. She stated how proud they were of her accomplishments and how attractive she appeared. I stood there, feeling invisible yet again. But then something unexpected occurred. Julia seized the microphone and began speaking. She thanked everyone for attending, then turned to face me. Her response was, "I want to take a moment to acknowledge my sister, who has always been there for me. I know I haven't always shown it, but I appreciate everything she's done. She's strong, kind, and an amazing person. I'm lucky to have her as my sister." I was stunned. Julia has never publicly recognized me like this before. Tears welled up in my eyes, and for a little minute, I believed our relationship could alter. Perhaps this was a tipping point. However, the goodwill was short-lived. Julia called me in a panic about a week before her wedding. She had misplaced the family heirloom necklace that our grandmother had given us, and she was scheduled to wear it on her wedding day. She was hysterical, and I dashed over to assist her in finding it. We flipped her place upside down and still couldn't find it. 2 days later, Julia called me again, accusing me of stealing the necklace. She claimed I must have taken it out of jealousy. I was astonished and hurt. All I had done was attempt to help her, and now she was accusing me of stealing. Of course, our parents believed her, as they usually did with Julia. I was devastated. Eventually, Julia discovered the necklace in a drawer she had forgotten about, but the damage had already occurred. She never apologized for accusing me, and neither did our parents. The wedding went on, but I felt like an outsider in my own family. After the wedding catastrophe, Alex and I chose to concentrate on our respective lives and families. Alex, who had always been technologically inclined, began researching ways to make money online. Initially, it was a side venture, but he quickly discovered a great formula and began earning thousands of dollars. Within a year, his web projects were bringing in tens of thousands, and our financial situation had much improved. With our newly acquired fortune, we purchased a stunning mansion in a famous area. Alex surprised me with a Bugatti as a symbol of our success, and we soon had 2 beautiful children. Life was great, or so it appeared. However, my parents remained unconcerned about our accomplishments. Despite Julia's recent marital issues, they paid her periodic visits and were more engaged in her life. Julia had been living on her own since her marriage ended and was struggling with her work. She had been laid off from a top legal firm and was struggling to make ends meet. Her jealousy grew worse when she saw our success. She came over one day, claiming to want to reconnect and spend time with her nieces and nephew. Initially, I believed her. I assumed she was sincerely attempting to restore our shattered relationship. However, it did not take long to learn her genuine objectives. She started dropping up unannounced, often when Alex was home alone. She would dress provocatively and make subtle, flirty comments to him. Alex, being the faithful spouse he is, quickly informed me of her behavior. We were both stunned and outraged by her conduct. Rather than address her immediately, we devised a strategy to reveal her true colors. We installed hidden cameras in the living room and other public locations to catch her in the act. It wasn't long until we obtained the evidence we required. Julia made her move one day while I was supposed to be out running errands. She approached Alex, placed her hand on his arm, and whispered provocative things into his ear. "Come on, Alex," she said. "You deserve someone who truly appreciates you. Someone like me." Alex played along just long enough to keep her talking. "Julia, you need to stop. I love my wife, and this is incredibly inappropriate." But Julia persisted, leaning closer. "She doesn't have to know. It'll be our little secret." That was the moment we'd been waiting for. Alex forcibly pushed her away, saying, "Julia, I'm serious. You need to leave. This is wrong on so many levels." We documented the entire event on camera. With the proof in hand, we decided to take action. First, we convened a family meeting, which included Julia's husband, who had been unaware of her activities. When everyone had gathered, we showed the video. The room was silent as the video aired. Julia's husband's face became red with rage, and my parents were completely astonished. The video concluded with a tense silence before Julia's husband stood up. "Julia, how could you? After everything, you try to seduce your own sister's husband?" His voice was full of surprise and hurt. Julia stammered, attempting to come up with an excuse, but there was no disputing what we had witnessed. Our parents looked at her, disappointed and disgusted. "Julia, We trusted you. We always believed you were the better daughter, but this is beyond forgiveness, my mother replied, her voice cracking. My dad shook his head. You've brought shame to our family. I don't even know who you are anymore. Julia's husband promptly filed for divorce. He left that same day, accompanied by their 2 children. My parents, who had always elevated Julia to a pedestal, were forced to confront the truth of her behavior. They moved away from her, unable to look at her in the same manner again. Julia's world came crashing down. She has lost her husband, her children, and the support of our parents. She tried to reach out to me, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her that readily. The scars were too fresh, and the treachery was too severe. Alex and I continued to construct our lives together, stronger than ever. Julia's betrayal, however terrible, had eventually brought us together. We knew we could handle anything as long as we had each other. Life went on, but the scars from the past remained. My parents, who had always preferred Julia, struggled to accept her conduct. They visited less frequently, and when they did, it was evident that they were still dealing with their disappointment. They attempted to appear normal, but the strain was evident. Julia, on the other hand, was attempting to gather up the pieces of her broken existence. She had lost her work and was struggling financially. Her attempts to reconnect with her husband had been unsuccessful, and he had filed for full custody of their children. She was alone and desperate. One day, she appeared at our door, looking more ragged and broken than I had ever seen her. She pleaded with me to let her in so she could explain. Despite my better judgment, I agreed. She sat at our kitchen table, tears flowing down her cheeks, admitting everything. I'm so sorry, she wailed. I've been jealous of you for so long. I saw how happy you were, how successful, and I couldn't stand it. I thought if I could take Alex away, I'd feel better. But I was wrong. I've lost everything. Her words struck me hard. For so long, I had regarded Julia as the favored one, the one who had everything. I never realized how deep her insecurities went. I felt sympathy and hatred, but mostly I was tired. Tired of the drama, the suffering, and the never-ending cycle of rivalry and animosity. I don't know what to say, Julia, I said. You've hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe. But I can't keep living with this anger. It's poisoning me, and it's poisoning our family. Julia nodded, tears still running down her cheeks. I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. We sat quietly for a while, the weight of our common history hanging thick in the air. Julia eventually went, leaving me to my own thoughts. Could I ever really forgive her? Could we ever get past this? In the weeks that followed, I concentrated on my family and my personal recovery. Alex was a rock for me every step of the process. We discussed Julia, the past, and what the future might hold. I slowly began to let go of some of my anger and bitterness. I recognized that holding on to it was not benefiting anyone, least of all myself. Julia continued to struggle, but she started to make changes. She began going to therapy.